Hello, everybody, and welcome to another of our weekly interviews with Dr. David Schwartz, Director of the Center for Gaming Research at UNLV, multiple-time author, co-host of the URComp meetup at Sea back in July. How are you doing, Dr. Dave?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm excited. This is one of my favorite articles you've written because I think it kind of bangs the drum that we've been talking about for a while now, and that I know you've seen conversations about this on Twitter and participate in them, that Vegas is maybe in a pretty tough spot right now because a lot of what made Vegas great and made it this global draw, some of that is starting to diminish. So why don't you give us kind of the overview of what the article is, and then we can kind of go through some of the key points together.
Absolutely. So basically what I want to do is try to boil down Las Vegas to an equation. And looking at history, not just saying, well, I don't like paying for parking, so I'm mad and I'm going to complain about it online. My challenge was, let me look back at history and see what the patterns are. Looking at that, it seems to me that it comes down to two things. People come to Vegas for two reasons. Novelty, meaning it's something they can't do anywhere else, and access, meaning they can get there and they can afford to get there. So I think whenever you start to diminish one of them, you end up in trouble.
I like it. And I really like that equation you came up with. And I like that you walked us through kind of how novelty has changed going back to the early days in the 40s. What was the novelty back then of Las Vegas?
Originally, the novelty in Las Vegas was just legal gambling. You literally could not legally play a slot machine or play craps or blackjack or roulette anywhere else outside of Nevada. So that was enough of a novelty that people would say, wow, I want to gamble legally, so I'm going to go to Las Vegas.
At one point I did, because I worked in northern Nevada in Tahoe, and I saw in the article you mentioned that Vegas had a little bit of competition. It was novel in the respect that it was part of Nevada and it was a major gaming hub, but you did mention Reno. Did give it some competition, and I was surprised to learn off camera. You said Reno actually had more gaming revenue than Vegas in the 40s, right?
Yeah, in the 30s and 40s, without a doubt, Reno was a bigger city than Las Vegas. Las Vegas was still tiny. Reno had the bigger base. They had the established gambling clubs there. Las Vegas remained pretty small until the invention of the casino resort. El Rancho Vegas, Thomas Hull, 1941, other people following after that. And in the 50s, Las Vegas overtook Reno as far as the state's and then later the nation's gaming capital.
Okay, so the novelty aspect of just gaming allowed Vegas to grow at a steady pace. And then you mentioned an interesting piece of infrastructure got put in place that increased accessibility. Tell us about that in the 1960s.
Yeah, there were two main things. The first one is I-15, which we don't really appreciate today, but it really did cut down the travel time from LA and all of Southern California. It made it much easier to get to Las Vegas from Southern California. The other one is the expansion of McCarran Airport, which made it easier to fly here and more direct flights here. So easier it is to get here, the less expensive it is to get here, the more visitation is going to go up.
Less friction. Makes total sense.
Exactly.
And so the novelty, when did the novelty, aka the monopoly of legal gaming, go away for Nevada?
Well, it started in the 70s with Atlantic City, my hometown. Resorts World International opened in 78. So it started then. It really accelerated in the late 80s, early 90s as you had tribal gaming, riverboat gaming coming online. So it's really been gone for a generation. You've got to go back to the 80s or even the 70s to say this is a time when if you want to gamble in the United States, you want to go to Las Vegas. That was challenged in the 70s. So that went away a long time ago. What I thought was interesting, and I probably should have talked about this more, but I have a chart in the article that compares the increase by decade in gaming win and visitor volume. And you can see the increase in gaming win is huge in the 70s, and it diminishes more and more each decade. So it's pretty negligible in the 2000s, for the past 20 years pretty much. Whereas visitor volume was pretty that was going up a lot in the 90s, even when gaming win wasn't going up as much. And in the 2000s, that was flat because of the recession at the end of the decade. And that's gone up more in 2010 or 2017. So to me, that's an interesting chart because it just shows that, yeah, for the past 30 years, increases in Las Vegas are more easily seen in the visitor volume than in the gaming win.
And I love that chart, by the way. I'm glad you brought it up because the for people that, or I guess everybody listening should go check it out so they can see it. But basically, if I remember right, it said in the 1970s, gaming went up like 300 something percent.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge.
And was that from the start of the decade to the end of the decade? Like
70 to 79, that's how I reckoned it.
Okay, so how much gaming win from 1970 compared to 1979? It was a huge
Yeah.
jump. And then it was 1980 to 89, that was maybe 200% or something. I mean, it's still
It's
pretty
about
significant.
100%. I'm looking at it right now. It's about 100%. And then it's even less in the 1990s, which is funny because we think of the 90s as the mega resort boom and all this stuff. Well, gaming win less than doubled in Clark County, and that's with the expansion of locals gaming too. So that really should tell you something that all this construction isn't, and then that's not even factoring in inflation. So really, Las Vegas is getting less and less efficient at collecting gaming win from people.
Because the decade that hasn't been completed yet, 2010 to I think 2017 is the last piece of data
Yeah.
you took in. It's a 1 or 2%.
Yeah, and I don't think that's keeping up with inflation. So I think you could say they're actually losing gaming win.
And to your point earlier, visitation is expanding, and you make the point that it's the novelty. And so once Vegas lost monopoly on gambling, they had to adjust, they had to be agile and come up with new novelty to keep bringing people in. So what did they do to overcome the loss of the monopoly on gaming?
Well, first thing they do is they really start to ramp up their amenities and their attractions. And obviously, the major resort in this, the big historical focus, is going to be the Mirage, Steve Wynn's Mirage. This was the first casino resort in Las Vegas designed from the beginning to have more of a focus on non-gaming, right? And this was the future. And if you look at the numbers, this was absolutely brilliant because even in the 80s, if visitation was going up, gaming win was not going up as fast. So this was a brilliant move to say we're going to build for this market that's clearly here. So that was the first one. And basically the others followed that template, followed that model, followed that paradigm.
The template was that he, like you said, added more non-gaming amenities, but it was the Siegfried and Roy. So he had a top-notch show,
Yeah.
great restaurants, he had a beautiful facility, convention center, right? Was that part of the original?
Yeah, the convention center was definitely part of it. And then you have Treasure Island. He brings in Cirque du Soleil, which ends up going all over the strip. I've lost track of how many Cirque shows and Cirque inspired shows there are. So that was this first generation of novelty. The first celebrity chef restaurants start out then in the 90s. As time has gone on, they've gotten more elaborate. They've added nightclubs to the mix. I think the dining restaurant scene has gotten even more competitive. So really now they're just finding new ways to provide this novelty, which is getting more and more expensive.
We shouldn't overlook too that even though the Mirage opened up the horizon of adding more non-gaming, at the time, and probably for a long time after they opened, they were number one in gaming too. Like the gamblers appreciated all these other options.
Yeah. So it was, I don't want to say a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it did sort of feed into itself. When you had people coming there for the non-gaming, they also did spend money on gaming.
So gaming, so the Mirage brings in this new mindset. Let's put everything under one roof. We'll give players just an experience. Because I'm a big fan of Steve Wynn. Obviously, not the disgusting things he's done or at least been accused of. Probably done. But yeah. But I mean, the guy's a genius, right? He's a visionary for Las Vegas. He brought so much, and he's said in a few different ways, like he never wants to underestimate the customers' appreciation of value or sophistication. Like he's not going to cut corners and put, some kind of chintzy thing that looks like it's really nice. Like if you walk up to anything in any of his resorts, it's going to be the real deal. Like you could walk down some obscure hallway and it's going to be some kind of $10,000 or more painting that's like, one of a kind. Like the guy always just over invests in just quality, and it pays off for him.
Yeah, it certainly does.
And I guess why I kind of launch into that is that you're saying that when maybe set a template for, all right, novelty and quality and like this high-end variety, other resorts came in and said, okay, we want to have variety too, but they can't all be the super high-end novelty, right? You can't be like, if you're trying to win on we're going to be novel because we're the most high-end, then what happens is, well, how are we going to pay for this? And that's kind of leads into your last point. What's going on in Vegas right now?
So, Vegas right now, really no surprise, but you have a lot more fees. Things are generally getting a lot more expensive. And the answer is stuff like arenas don't pay for themselves. Even though the tickets are pretty pricey, they have to somehow make back all this money. So they have to recoup all these investments, which is why the price is going up. Prices for pretty much everything in Las Vegas are going up.
Yeah, it's because gambling can subsidize so much, right? I mean, the Bellagio, the Mirage, I mean, it's so gorgeous but it would never be that over the top if all it was what they charge for the hotel rooms, or even just what they got from the restaurant cover. Like you couldn't have that spectacular atrium and like just the nice carpets and like everything is so nice, but it's subsidized because at a roulette table that you make a point is not that expensive to put into place and pay a dealer. Mm-hmm. You could have somebody lose, $10,000, $50,000, $1 million in a session, and that all of a sudden makes over investing in a giant chandelier make a lot more sense because you brought in that $1 million player who lost it at a $10,000 roulette table.
Yeah, it absolutely does, and that's the challenge: is how do you build this in? How do you keep on offering that kind of novelty without intruding in the access?
And I get in. So a novel strategy in Las Vegas could be, hey, we're going to be the value resort. We're going to not do resort fees. We're going to not do parking fees.
Yeah.
But I guess the challenge is that once a resort tries to compete on, we want to be novel by being super high end and be like the Wynn, now they took on a ton of debt. They got big payments to fulfill. They've got investors that are not going to be excited about lowering costs on anything. So it's really tough to go backwards, right? I mean, maybe a resort like Hooters or something like that where maybe they haven't had a big capital expense yet, they could be the novel. But then the hard part, if you're coming in from out of town or something, like, where are you staying? Oh, I'm staying at Hooters. Oh, okay. No offense to the good people at Hooters, but it doesn't have the same cachet as an Aria or Palazzo. So the point is, it's kind of a catch-22. Like, there's only a handful of properties that could probably be profitable and still go down like a real low-cost route.
Yeah. Well, historically, Circus Circus Enterprises did that really well, where Circus Circus had the lowest room rate in town, but they were one of the most profitable places because they didn't have to put as much into the rooms. For $20 a night, you're not going to be asking for a Bellagio suite. So it's just knowing that customer, knowing that, okay, we can make a lot, we can turn the customers over quicker, we're investing less in the customers. That's a viable model, and that's one that's not as lucrative potentially as the other model, which is we're going to have customers that are more affluent, they're going to spend a lot more, raise that room rate up. So that's the approach now, which is kind of pricing, I think, a lot of people out of Vegas.
And Circus Circus is actually, from what I've heard, it's still doing well, right? I mean, it's still a profitable property.
It makes money. It's not the most glamorous property, but some people don't come to Las Vegas because they want to stay at the most glamorous property. They just want to have fun and gamble.
Mm-hmm. And so you touch on resort fees, charging for parking, concession fees, all these kind of nickel and dime things.
Yeah.
And this is something we've talked about before. it's almost, actually, I wouldn't say it's almost, it's worse than if they just raised the room price from 70 to 110, because the feeling that people get when they show up and they feel like they're kind of getting screwed, right? They're
Yeah, it's not how you want to start their stay with you. Is all right. We're gonna reach into your pocket and take some money out before you even get checked into your room. It's just, I don't see how that's really starting them off in the right frame of mind to be relaxed and spend a lot of money. Because you're already going to put them on notice. Okay, we snuck this fee in. We're taking a lot of money from you, so you need to be worried about money here. It's the wrong message to send. I mean, maybe they want to teach people to be more reasonable financial managers and manage their money better. So maybe it's some kind of reverse psychology thing where they're going to say, watch out, spend your money very carefully when you're in Vegas. Maybe that's what they're trying to do.
I'm sure that is true. Yeah, financial management is something that is preached throughout Vegas.
Yeah.
Yep. Obviously, very sarcastic. But I've heard the argument that the resort fees are a way for them to avoid paying the Expedias and the Booking.com's commission, and maybe it's something.
Yeah.
It's also a way to get around taxes, and so it's a clever financial way for them to preserve more of that room revenue.
Well, the customer still pays a tax on it, so it doesn't have anything to do with taxes, but it does cut out those online travel agents. So it does give them that. It also helps them move up on the booking engines. Their room looks like it's cheaper, so it moves up. And I know Derek Stevens talked about this a couple of years ago, but if you can get on that first page of results, there's a definite correlation with how much people will spend. So that's why he added the resort fee, because it'll get them on that page and people will book.
It makes sense. I mean, I totally get once that cat is out of the bag and like everyone else is advertising $19 rooms with $80 resort fees, and it's like, that can't be the one that looks like $100 room. But yeah, it's just that perception, and it's not good. Because I was just actually, before we got on, I was talking to a friend who's out in Las Vegas for a work trip, and he's already spent something like $5,000, some of it at the table, some of it treating clients to dinner. But it's just, I mean, it's like nowadays going to Vegas is like getting in the ring with Tyson, where it's like, like they're trying to knock you out and take all your money.
Yeah.
It's like
they're hurting on you.
Yeah, they're finding new ways, like, ooh, gotcha for the charging for a glass of water. Oh, here's the left hook for crossing the street fee. It's like, I don't know. It's just, it used to be like, oh man, I can't wait to go to Vegas because this is gonna be so much fun. And then now I just feel like everyone's like, oh, how are they gonna get me this time? It's rough. And so anyway, you make the point that there's clearly a trend that in spite of a strong economy, which is always correlated with great results for Vegas, more visitation, now it's flat or even declining, and the resorts are starting to send out questionnaires to their players to find something out. So tell us about that. What's going on with the questionnaires?
Apparently they are. I picked this up on Vital Vegas, and apparently they're sending out questionnaires asking people, well, do you still like Vegas? And if you don't, why not? That's what it boils down to.
And I followed Vital Vegas on Twitter. He's been banging this drum for a while too. And I think if you read the comments, it's very clear. You don't need to send out a questionnaire. It's like, it's all right there.
I don't know why you need to ask people that, because it should be obvious. If we made things more expensive and people are coming less, they obviously don't like that it's more expensive. And asking them to tell, you need to look at their behavior as opposed to what they say. It doesn't make sense to me. So when people complained about the resort fee, 10 years ago, oh, well, they'll keep coming, so it doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter what they say, because even though they say they hate it, they're still going to come. Now the people aren't coming as much. It's all right. Well, now what are they saying about it? It seems like it's one way or the other. Either you don't care what they say and you just look at the behavior and you adjust your prices to match the behavior, or you care what people are saying and you want to do damage control.
Well, I saw somebody say, we may have talked about this, but I think it was Caesars that said, "Hey, we discovered that 20% of people in our loyalty program are actually unprofitable, so we're gonna cut their offers." And yeah, I mean, it's one thing to suppress offers for people that are clearly gaming card counters or people that are doing something nefarious to, like, they're clearly an unprofitable customer, they're bad for business, don't bring them in, versus people that whatever, they use every comp, they show up at every multiplier event, they pick up every toaster, and you run the equation. It's like, hey, we lost $200 on this person. Yeah, but you know what? Next year you're going to make 1,000, and just there is value. And this is the thing that the CFOs, I think, or the bean counters don't get, is that there's just value in a warm body in a casino that's like providing energy, that's playing the games, like just walking around. Because sure, you cut out all the unprofitable players, and you maximize everything, and a few people left, but they weren't unprofitable anyway. But like, as the casino gets deader and deader and deader, like, the people you want are going to stop showing up because it's not as fun or energetic as it was before.
Yeah, and I find it really hard to believe that 1 out of 5 people walking into Caesars Entertainment Properties are literally beating the system. When you add what they're, so even if they're playing video poker, with what that payback is, how many comps are they giving them that they're able to actually be unprofitable to the casino? It seems like that's kind of casino marketing 101, is you decide what you're going to give them back to try to incentivize them. And especially Caesars, which is so proud of total rewards. I thought the whole point of total rewards was that you looked at their total spend and you try to incent them to spend all of their gaming spend with your company. At least that's what they've always said. So is it that they have more money to gamble and they're choosing to gamble it with other companies instead of Caesars because they're not incentivizing them enough? Or or what is Caesars trying to do? Get them to gamble more money than they can? What's the goal? I always told the goal was wasn't to get them to gamble more. The goal was to get them to spend as much of their percentage of money they were going to gamble with Caesars or Harrah's as opposed to another company.
True, and it's just, you're right. And I mean, I worked at Caesars, or back then as Harrah's, and there was a lot of smart people there then. There's still a lot of smart people there now. I've got a lot of good friends that still work there. It strikes me as weird that all of a sudden they uncovered 10 to 20% of people are unprofitable. Because I know they had access to a lot of great data there, with a lot of great minds that were crunching the numbers and like making sure they're as profitable as possible.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is like a short-term thing where they're like, shoot, we got to cut costs pronto, or we got to do something, and I do not see how over the last 20 years of Total Rewards, all of a sudden there's been like, oh my gosh, there's 20% of people we have been screwing this up on, right? Like, I mean, there's no way.
So they talk about how many millions of people there are in the database. That's literally millions of customers have somehow figured out how to game the system. Like, I'm very skeptical of that. Also, the thing is these players that aren't going to be so let's assume they don't mean that the casino is literally losing money when they walk in the door. Let's just assume that they're a low margin customer. So they're not a high margin customer. They may be a low margin customer, but they're literally your most loyal and dedicated customer. You look at the people doing, the slot YouTubers, people like that. They are people, maybe they're not the highest margin customer, but they are going to be coming back and they're enthusiastic about your company. So it would seem that you want to keep them.
100%.
As opposed to having them outside doing it somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, and some of the low margin customers can be your biggest advocate, and instead of paying $10,000 on Facebook ads to reach an audience, you could just treat some of these louder people well, and they're going to tell all their friends and post on Facebook, and it's more authentic than your ad of a hot couple smiling at a pool saying like great rates in Vegas this fall. Like, just treat customers better, make the rates lower. You can cut your marketing expense because they're going to be singing your praises.
Yeah. Other question for me is sustainability. So you could have somebody who's got a big velocity. They come in, they're firing through, 10 grand on a trip, 20 grand on a trip. Well, how sustainable are they? Are they going to be able to do this for 10 years? As opposed to your gambler, and I don't want to say they're an advantaged player, but they're a savvier gambler who might be losing 500 a trip, but they can keep doing that indefinitely. And certainly for the short term, it would be great to have somebody who's dropping 10 or 20 grand on a weekend. But to me, the more important thing would be to have customers that were going to be sustainable, that they weren't going to burn out.
You're right. I heard an interview with Steve Sear where he talked about having to turn over his whole player list like every couple of years, something like that. It's like 80% of his players just burn out.
Yeah,
they just blow all their money, and like he needs to find another 80% every year. I can't remember what the numbers were, but yeah, you're right. Like if all you do is care about the VIP, you're always going to have to be hunting. Whereas if you just take care of the people that make some money, aren't whales, but you take care of everybody, that's a sustainable business, like you said.
Or let's say you're going after the VIPs and one of them loses $100 million and then they sue you or you have to sue them to get it back. I mean, the litigation costs of that, to me, it seems would drain the profit you would make. So I'd much rather have the retail player who, maybe eats a little bit too much shrimp in the buffet and cuts down on our food margin, but we're not going to have to invest as much in that player, and they're going to be sustainable.
Yeah, at the high, it's just, I think what it is that it's a lot more fun to go after that high-end player when you're like, hey, all right, let's negotiate a private jet. He loves Cuban cigars, so I'm going to go to this place to get Cuban cigars, and his wife loves cheetahs, so let's call this private zoo and get a cheetah over here. It's just like, I think the executives, it stokes their creative side more to put together these things. So it's a lot more fun than like, how can we get a good deal on 4,000 toasters for our next like diamond tier giveaway? It's like, whatever. They're unprofitable anyway. Let's cut them. Let's focus on Cheetah Man and getting new watches for them.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the focus would be sustainability with the customers and what are your costs of acquisition of a new high margin customer versus your cost of retention of an old low margin customer. Cost of acquisition might wipe out that margin, especially if they're not sustainable.
And then at the high end too, there's a lot of deals that get negotiated. I mean, we deliberately comp. Like we're paid. Most of our contracts are based on like back end, how much somebody plays theoretical. But at that real high end, we've had at bats. We could have gotten the business, but it's like, all right, we got to negotiate the percentage loss refund. Got to negotiate different odds on the blackjack table and how many promo chips up front and blah blah. And then, one, it was just something where we have a big sustainable base of just friendly customers we love working with, and it's just one, we didn't want to change our model to like go after that super high end. But then two, if you look at it from the casino side, that the margin on blackjack is already razor thin, and if you're like, all right, we'll tweak some odds and we'll give a bigger discount on loss, then it's
and this is where it gets unprofitable. This is how Don Johnson a couple of years ago made millions of dollars in Atlantic City. He played blackjack. He was not an advantaged player, wasn't a skill player, wasn't a counter, but he was able to negotiate the rules of the game, and he negotiated his cash back, and he also got cash just to show up and play, and he ended up taking from a couple of $1 million, and the president of the Tropicana left his job after that. So that was kind of a really bad thing, because and I do a presentation, hand-to-hand risk management for the casino professional, and I kind of ran through the deal, and I show it. I'm like, look, best case scenario, the casino loses slightly. This is kind of the most obvious scenario. The casino will lose. Why did they approve this? Well, you think that you're so smart because you're on the side of the table that's the house, and the house always wins. You think that, he's just a gambler. He's going to keep gambling till he doesn't have any more money. Well, not necessarily, not if he's disciplined. So when you try to court that high-end player, one of them may be that. And then again, the other ones that aren't that, they may not want to pay, and they may decide to take the legal route, which is going to be expensive.
Well, I guess it's somebody from the casino industry may be watching this and be like, yeah, easy for them to say from the sidelines, but
I guess, but how many posters could you buy with 1 hour's work from a lawyer?
Yep.
Let's say some high roller just files some kind of lawsuit against you, and it just takes your lawyer an hour to look at it and say this is ridiculous, whatever, which would take longer than that. Like, how many toasters could you buy to incent people to come and play a couple $100s?
Yeah, it's rough. And then yeah, we talked about resort fees and everything getting more expensive. We didn't even touch on like odds of the games getting tweaked and
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. I mean, that's a whole other article.
yeah. I mean, to me, the novelty of the biggest novelty of Las Vegas is the strip. Period. Like that, for
Yeah.
just being able to, just the sheer volume of people from different cultures and everybody's like dressed up to the nines, like because it's their Vegas trip and like everyone looks their best in Vegas and that's the novelty for me. So I don't know if what they're doing now is big enough or the deceleration it is big enough to actually like potentially they could lose the strip because I remember being a young kid, Reno never had the strip, but I remember it was like kind of buzz. There's a nice buzz there, and now it's like it is not nice, right? There's homeless, there's drugs. It's just you don't walk around Reno anymore, and I doubt Vegas will ever get that way. But it's just you don't want to keep nickel and diming and get less and less people, or less, and lose the strip because that's something like you just can't recreate anywhere.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt.
All right. Well, we this is an ongoing saga. I'm looking forward to the next iterations. And when sports betting comes to, let's say, New Orleans, it's already coming down to Mississippi in the South. So a lot of the novelty, because sports betting was a novelty for Las Vegas and Nevada. That's going away. So yeah, I like the way you package that as novelty, access, basically affordability and ease of getting there. So we'll see how those three pillars are affected in the coming months and how it affects Las Vegas.
Yeah, we will.
Cool. So what are you working on next?
Doing some volunteer work and seeing how Las Vegas entertainers do volunteer work.
Oh, interesting.
Probably not gonna get 100,000 views, but it's an interesting story to tell.
Yeah, are they doing it because they're good people, or is it to expand their
I think
brand,
so.
or combination?
Yeah.
Right. Hopefully, just that they're good people. I'm sure they.
Yeah, I
are.
think so.
Awesome. Well, good. Tell them the UR Comp family respects them and loves them and cheers them
I
on
sure
in their
will.
works. And thank you, Dr. Dave. And we'll talk. Actually, we'll
Thank
see you
you.
next week at G2E.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Awesome.